Grandma, find mommy.
At 1 a.m., my 6-year-old granddaughter called me in tears. It was so sudden that I was taken aback. It had been 7 years since my daughter left for marriage, but this was the first time such an incident had occurred. It was clear from the impatient tone of my granddaughter's voice that something had happened. "Where's Dad? What happened over there?" I asked gently to calm my tearful granddaughter. However, I was speechless at the unbelievable facts I was told then. Since my husband passed away several years ago, I had been living alone in a small way, and my pleasure was to see my granddaughter, Chloe, who lived in the neighborhood. Every Saturday, my daughter and her husband would visit us with their family.
Hello, Grandma.
Chloe, who will be 6 years old this year, has a friendly personality, and as soon as I open the front door, she comes smiling and laughing and hugs me. My daughter Ava and her husband Matthew were always smiling and watching her. It was 7 years ago that my daughter got married. I still remember well when she blushed and shyly introduced Matthew to me. After talking with him for a while, I felt reassured and agreed to marry him, thinking that he would take good care of my daughter with his quiet but gentle demeanor. They soon had a child, and my daughter and her husband's life was in good order, and they even took care of me living alone in various ways. I was so happy that Ava was happy. However, such a peaceful life did not last forever. I never dreamed at that time that I would be involved in a terrible incident from there. It was one Saturday that I sensed something was wrong. When my daughter and granddaughter visited my house as usual, they looked somewhat gloomy.
Matthew couldn't make it to work today either.
Ava raised her eyebrows and smiled stiffly. Indeed, my daughter and granddaughter are visiting my home more and more often, and I have not seen him for a long time. I wonder if she misses her husband. I was thinking such a carefree thought, but when we finished our lunch, I saw something shocking. Ava stood in the kitchen and rolled up her arms to help me wash the dishes. The sight that caught my eye made my eyes widen in shock. "Hey, what's up with that?" I exclaimed, and Ava hastily hid her arm as she was startled by my voice. The inside of her arm still bore a large, fresh burn scar.
"This is just a mistake I made while cooking."
"Cooking wouldn't injure a place like that, would it? It's really nothing. Please don't make such a fuss. But I can't leave you with such a bad burn." I tried to hold back, but she stubbornly repeated, "It's nothing," and eventually left the living room as if to escape. I was so upset by her clearly unusual behavior that I became upset. I approached my granddaughter, who was playing in the living room, wondering if it had something to do with the two of them looking gloomy. "Hey, has anything happened to your mom lately?" Then Chloe's gaze wandered as if lost, and she opened her mouth while looking down.
Mom and Dad have been fighting a lot lately.
Young granddaughter said this and then fell silent, but for me those words were enough. Apparently, their unflattering behavior had something to do with my daughter's husband. After that, I asked Ava once more when she came back, "Did something happen with Matthew by any chance?"
"Nothing at all. Don't worry about it."
However, she still did not want to talk to me and went home immediately that day. I was left with nothing but anxiety. I spent my days in a muddle, and 2 weeks later, on a weekend,
Grandma, I want a kid's cell phone.
Chloe said cheerfully as soon as she arrived at my house. It was rare for a good-natured granddaughter to ask for something for her age, and I was surprised at first, but when I looked at the calendar, I understood. For a few weeks later, it was her birthday. But Chloe is still in the 1st grade. Maybe it's too early for her to have a cell phone. I thought so, but my honest feeling was that as a grandmother, I would very much like to fulfill her wish. As I was wondering what I should say, Ava, who was standing by me, saw through my thoughts and suddenly opened her mouth.
"I'll pay half of it, so I wonder if we can buy it for her. It has GPS and is very convenient."
My daughter explained that although the kids' cell phones are named cell phones, they are not connected to the internet and are designed only for communication. She says that many parents let their little ones have them in case something goes wrong. If that's the case, let me buy one for her. I was so relieved to hear this that I immediately went to a cell phone shop that day and gave my granddaughter a kid's cell phone. Chloe was delighted when I registered my daughter's and my phone numbers for her to try it out.
Thank you, Grandma. I will take good care of this.
I was relieved to see her cheerful face, which I had not seen in a long time. However, that feeling soon disappeared.
Please don't tell Matthew. He's very strict about this kind of thing.
My daughter, who was watching Chloe next to me, overheard me secretly. I looked over at Ava, who was staring at the kid's cell phone with a somewhat mysterious expression on her face. Did something happen after all? I couldn't help but ask her, but my daughter still seemed reluctant to answer and shook her head helplessly.
No, you don't have to worry about anything.
I felt her strong will not to talk anymore, and I could not say anything else from there. What in the world is going on at Ava's family? Then one day, when I was growing anxious and mysterious, a decisive incident finally occurred. It was the night 5 days after I bought Chloe a kid's cell phone. I woke up to the sound of the phone on my bedside table ringing. I rubbed my sleepy eyes and checked the time, finding it was 1 o'clock. I pressed the call button with my head still not quite clear, wondering who it could be at this insane hour.
Grandma, find my mommy.
I woke up at once to hear the urgent voice in my ear, and when I checked, I found that the call was from Chloe. It was obvious from her personality and the tense tone of her voice that it was not a prank call. Where's Dad? Chloe, what happened over there? I thought of Ava's dark expression over the past few months, as if it might be an emergency. Then my granddaughter spoke shocking words while shuffling on the phone.
Daddy, hit mommy and took her somewhere.
What? As I listened to Chloe squealing, my eyes went blank. After all, something serious was going on between Matthew and Ava. I'll be right there. Just wait for me. I left the house in a hurry, keeping the phone connected. I didn't know what was going on, but I was sure that my daughter and granddaughter were in danger. 15 minutes later, I arrived at my daughter's house. When I went inside, I found the living room had been in a miserable sight. What the hell? I involuntarily clammed my mouth shut when I saw the overturned picture frames and broken plates strewn all over the floor. It was obvious that someone had gone wild. As I was stunned by the scene, Chloe was crying and held out a kid's cell phone to me.
Mommy said something to Daddy, and they got into a fight.
And the video on the screen left me speechless this time. There was Matthew grabbing Ava and shouting angrily, "You look down on me too anyway, don't you?" Apparently, Chloe, who had been asleep, woke up at the sound of the two arguing and hid to record the whole thing. He was so furious that he took my daughter with him and went away. The unbelievable video on the screen made me feel anger welling up in the pit of my belly. I had allowed the marriage to take place for the sake of my daughter's happiness. If I knew he would make her suffer like this, I would never have entrusted Ava to Matthew in the first place. I can't forgive him. What has he done to my precious daughter? I will definitely get Ava back and make him reflect on his actions, just as I swore firmly. Chloe wiped away her tears and suddenly pulled my hand away.
This is for my grandma if something happens to my mom.
I looked down and saw a single key shining in the palm of her tiny hand. After that, I told a relative who lived nearby what had happened and somehow managed to get Chloe to stay with her. And with the kid's cell phone in hand, I was visiting a mountain. As my daughter explained to me, this kid's cell phone was equipped with GPS, and it could tell the location of the registered cell phone. Fortunately, Ava seemed to have been taken away with the phone in her hand and could be tracked, so I came as the GPS led me. As I was walking along the pitch-dark mountain road, relying on the light of my cell phone, I heard someone arguing from somewhere. "Ava, please be safe." Praying with all my heart, I hurried toward the direction where the voice was coming from. As soon as I reached a clearing in the trees, two figures jumped into my eyes, and I couldn't help but shout out, "Ava!"
Oh, Mom!
At the sound of my voice, my daughter turned around as if in a panic. Her long hair was firmly held by Matthew, and it was obvious to me that she had been forcibly brought here.
What? How could this place be?
He probably never dreamed that I would appear. Taking advantage of Matthew's surprise, Ava pushed him away with all her strength. My daughter was caught off guard and staggered away from him and came to me at once. I embraced her, but when I saw her face, I was astonished. Ava's right cheek was swollen red as she had been hit by Matthew. I couldn't help but feel blood rush to my head, so I stepped forward and glared at him as if to protect my daughter. You are so cruel to a girl's face. How dare you?
It's Arva's fault for saying all those cocky things.
It's disgusting that you hit my daughter just because you got fired from your job.
What? Why did you say that?
I was thinking about all the things that had happened before I came here. That time, Chloe handed me the key to my daughter's desk drawer. I opened the drawer and found that it was filled with a lot of papers, and at the top of them was a letter in an envelope. I am sorry for not telling you. Everything that has happened so far is written here. The letter began with such a sentence, and it contained something very hard to believe. According to Ava, Matthew started acting strangely about 5 months ago. He came home late every day after drinking and was not home much on his days off. Furthermore, his tone of voice became rough, as if he had changed into a different person. At first, Ava was worried that he was stressed from work and approached him, but it seemed that Matthew gradually began to raise his hand to her, perhaps because he felt bad about such my daughter. She said that the burns on her arms were also received from him, who was still having a rough time. While I was reading out Ava's letter, I stared at Matthew, who had a bitter look on his face. I heard you were laid off from your company 6 months ago.
I couldn't see any future in that kind of company, so I quit on my own.
You tell a lie. I know it's because you embezzled company money. At my words, his eyes widened in surprise. In fact, Ava, who thought Matthew was acting so strangely, said that she had summoned up the courage to call the company to ask about his usual appearance. There, she was informed that Matthew had been fired and the reason why. The company warmly agreed to settle the case on the condition that he would repay the full refund of the $50,000 he had embezzled because he wanted to play with, and they was never sued. However, taking advantage of this, Matthew kept this fact from my daughters. However, he became frustrated by the fact that he was saddled with a large debt and had nowhere to turn for advice, and he eventually began to take his stress out on Ava. Not at all. Ava should have talked to me about it from the beginning. I gently touched the reddened cheek of my daughter, who had her eyes down in a bad way, and her eyes filled with tears.
I'm so sorry. I thought this was a family matter. I didn't want to bother you as much as possible.
Our strong sense of responsibility had taken its toll on her, and she had tried to solve Matthew's problems on her own. When my daughter found out everything, she tried not to provoke him as much as possible, and tried to discuss the matter of his dismissal and the debt when he was in a good mood, but it still seemed to have led to the current turmoil. However, she said that she had anticipated the possibility of this happening and had put the situation together in a drawer and left the key with Chloe, just in case. In hindsight, buying her the kid's cell phone was probably just in case something happened. At that time, Matthew, who was watching us, began to tremble and shake.
She disrespected me, so I educated her. I didn't do anything wrong.
Matthew's face turned red and he pointed at Ava as if he was desperate because everything had been exposed. I was so stunned by his incoherent remark. What the hell were you going to do by bringing her all the way to these mountains?
I was just going to leave her here and make her reflect on what she had done.
You're the one who should be sorry. You deserve yourself to get fired from the company. Then, just like he had lost his mind, Matthew rushed toward us, as if he had been hit by a bullseye and had become upset.
Shut up, you old hag. Don't you dare disobey me.
I rushed to cover her to protect my daughter. The next moment, however, a police siren blared from far away, and the police officer who had rushed to the scene quickly subdued him.
What? The police?
I'm not an idiot. I already called the police. I replied coldly, patting Ava's back as she suddenly shrank back and trembled. When I had contacted the police immediately after the situation was discovered, I had actually been told to stand by myself. However, I couldn't stand by and participate in the search for my daughter on the condition that the call be connected. In other words, the whole situation up to this point had been entirely hushed up by the police.
What the hell? Stop it. It's not my fault.
I spat at him, looking down at Matthew, who was about to storm out even after all this time. Give it up. You'll be sorry in prison from now on. With these words, He must have realized that there was no use in struggling. He shook his shoulders for a moment in shock at my words, and then relaxed his entire body as if he had given up. Matthew was then taken to the police station and arrested for raising his hand against my daughter. Since there was also evidence of the assault on video, it seems that he will not be able to get out of jail for a while. Of course, my daughter divorced him and demanded $30,000 in alimony. Even if he gets out from behind bars in the future, he will surely be in a considerable debt. Hell, if we include the alimony to Ava and the amount he had embezzled. Meanwhile, I will be living with Ava and Chloe. From now on, the three of us women will enjoy a lively and happy life together.